Today's episode of Sports Spectrum's podcast is presented by our friends at Compassion International. We've talked about Compassion, and we're so grateful for their partnership here on Sports Spectrum. They have been with us now for 4 years, and the work that they do is second to none. We're talking about releasing kids, young children, from poverty. No child should be stuck in poverty. It's just not what should be happening. And Compassion says, you know what, we're going to do something about it. We're going to stand in the gap with these children and help them and their families be released from poverty-stricken situations. And when you go to the website, compassion.com/sportsspectrum, you'll see a list of children that are waiting to be released from poverty. Just simply the words, choose me, kids from Indonesia, kids from all around the world, Mexico, Uganda, Nicaragua, Colombia, Ghana, just the Philippines, Bangladesh, all over the world. These kids did nothing to deserve the poverty-stricken situations that they're in. But here's the beautiful thing about Compassion. They give you and I an opportunity to stand in the gap and help these kids and release them from poverty. It's why myself and my wife and my daughter feel so strongly about Compassion and sponsor a child through their program. And we want to encourage you to do the same. It's $38 a month, tax deductible, and it connects a child living in poverty with a loving, church-driven child sponsorship program like Compassion International. Consider it today. Pray about it and think about where your money might go each and every day. In this situation, your money is going for medical checkups, nutritional food, educational assistance, mentoring, and most importantly, every sponsored child with Compassion will hear about Jesus Christ and be encouraged to develop a lifelong relationship with God. Check out compassion.com/sportsspectrum and consider sponsoring a child today.
This is Sports Spectrum, the intersection of sports and faith, where we bring Jesus back into the conversation. Here's your host, Jason Romano.
And hi, everyone. Welcome to Sports Spectrum. I am Jason Romano. So glad you're tuning into the show today. Our website, sportspectrum.com, is a great place to go for all of our content. sportspectrum.com. And then, of course, my email address, if you'd like to reach us directly, jason@sportspectrum.com is my email, jason@sportspectrum.com. Forgive me on my voice. Still working on the raspiness, trying to get rid of whatever it is that's done this to my voice, but we're going to push through because that's what we do here at Sports Spectrum. And today we have a fantastic conversation with Jake Reed. Jake is a Major League Baseball pitcher right now, currently with the New York Mets. Jake was drafted in the 40th round back in 2011 by the White Sox and then went to pitch in college at the University of Oregon and then selected in the 5th round of the 2014 amateur draft, MLB amateur draft, by the Minnesota Twins. And Jake, in 2021, finally got that opportunity to make it to the big leagues. He's a guy who had been in the minor leagues for many, many years, just trying to get that opportunity, hanging on, AA, AAA, and just trying to achieve that dream that so many people who are, especially when you're little kids, are trying to achieve, and that's to play Major League Baseball. And Jake did that, and it was quite the whirlwind year. Wait till you hear him share what his 2021 was like. He makes his Major League debut with the Los Angeles Dodgers. He's up there for 6 games, and then he's gone. And then he gets a chance again with the New York Mets, and he had quite the, I'll just say, appearance with the New York Mets in a few of the games that he pitched in, but also he wasn't just a pitcher in some cases. So he'll share with you about his 2021, all that God has taught him, and it's quite the conversation. We were able to do it in person, and it's coming up right now on Sports Spectrum with Jake Reed. Take a listen. Jake Reed, welcome back to Sports Spectrum, buddy. How you doing?
I'm doing good. Yeah, good to be back. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's good to have you. Good to see you in person, which is so nice with everything going on to actually have conversations in person together. I think this is the first time you've been on the show by yourself, the last time or last couple times that we've done interviews was always with your lovely wife, Janie.
Yep.
USA Olympic silver medalist, Janie Reed. It's how you have to introduce her that way now, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and you are a New York Met pitcher right now as we record this, and I can also say MLB pitcher because it's been quite the 2021 year, and that's where I really thought we would have our conversation when I saw you and I said, Jake's going to be here at this conference I'm at. I definitely want to spend some time with him. One of the things I was thinking about was just how hard you've worked to then finally see that dream achieved and get that chance to pitch in the major leagues. It was with the Dodgers first, then with the Mets. But let's go through this a little bit, what it was like, because 2020, you didn't pitch for a team because there were no minor league teams playing at that time with COVID. What's the last kind of year and a half, couple years been like leading up to that opportunity to get that major league dream achieved?
Yeah, I think, 2020 came and was going back to big league camp with the Twins, was at camp and had a couple outings, was throwing okay, and then, COVID shut everything down and went home. And obviously nobody knew when everything was going to get going again. And I just kind of assumed that when they did, I was going to be included in some sort of group, and so the season kind of got back going, and they had the plans to get together the season to get going in July, and then the alternate site, and they could be in a group of 60 guys or whatever. And again, I assumed I was going to be in that, and I wasn't. And it was my last year, on contract with the Twins, and wasn't invited to the alternate site. And at that point, I wasn't. I honestly kind of thought I was going to be done, just because I didn't think I was going to get a job.
Right.
And I just figured, if this is what the Twins think of me, then I'm assuming this is kind of what, all 29 other teams think of me. And so I started kind of thinking about and praying about what was next. And I wasn't sure what that was. I didn't get that far, because, the season came and went, and then November came around, and, I became a free agent. And pretty early on, we started getting calls. My agency started getting calls from teams. And, so Angels called, Dodgers called, and a bunch of these teams were calling out. We were shocked. I was so surprised, and it was a blessing for sure. Like I said, I wasn't sure that I was going to get a job. So, to have a bunch of teams calling and to get an opportunity to finally, make some money, in the game of baseball was great. It was a long 6 years in a lot of ways, in the minor leagues with the Twins. But it was just a cool season to kind of feel wanted and valued again as a relief pitcher. But then signed with the Angels and didn't pitch much in spring. Kind of had a rough start of the season there in Salt Lake. And my agents worked really, really hard in the off season and negotiating the contract to negotiate some opt-outs and stuff. And I ended up having an opt-out on June 1st in my contract, where I could kind of become a free agent again if it was a situation that we, wanted out of, or whatever the case was. And so we took it on June 1st, and luckily the Dodgers were still around and wanted to sign me. And so I went to Oklahoma City, which is AAA for the Dodgers, and Janie was in Oklahoma City training with her team and playing a couple games there. I hadn't seen her in months. And so it was really cool timing of going to a new team, getting to Oklahoma City, where we had had some roots and some friends, because she had coached softball there, and it was a familiar town, it was a familiar area, and then she was there, her family was there, and so getting to see her, got to watch her play, and then join this new team, this new organization. It was a really cool kind of transition there out of Salt Lake, and then had a really good kind of 4 or 5 weeks in Oklahoma City. Had a great experience there with that team, and pitched really well. And it was July 4th, I think, actually, I got called into the office, and my manager told me that I was going to be joining the team, the big league team, on the taxi squad in Miami the next day. And so,
explain that, the taxi squad.
Yeah, so with the whole COVID season, and then even this past year that we had, the taxi squad was a group of 4 or 5 guys that would travel on the road with a team in case guys got sick or got hurt or whatever, and then they could pull from that group of guys rather than having to fly somebody. Especially we were in Oklahoma City, they were in Miami, so as opposed to having to fly somebody from across the country last minute, they had a group of guys there that could do that. So you're not in the big leagues, but you're kind of, it's like the next guy up type of thing. And so I went into it just kind of thinking that like, oh, like it's going to take somebody getting sick or, getting hurt for me to get an opportunity. And went there and was on the taxi squad for a day and got called up the next day. It's actually, that story is kind of funny too. It was very kind of anticlimactic and not the way that I would have thought, the call was going to come. I got told by my AAA manager I was going to the taxi squad. I get to Miami. I'm in, Dave Roberts' office talking to him, getting to know him a little bit. And he tells me as I'm leaving the room, like, hey, I think the plan is for you to taxi squad today, and then be activated tomorrow. And I was like, I didn't know that.
You had
and
no
like,
idea.
well, yeah, I had no idea. And it's like, well, nothing's set in stone. And so I come in the next day, and he calls me in and tells me that I was active. He just says, hey, you're activated. Be ready to go tonight. And I was like, all right, I got to go make some phone calls. He's like, do what you got to do. Just very nonchalant about it. And I'm walking out the door, and then he's like, wait, is this your first time? And I'm like, yes, this is my first time. And then he gets up and gives me a hug and makes a big deal out of it. And then, I got to go out and make the phone calls and stuff. So it ended up being a pretty cool.
Yeah. The 22,454th Major League player ever. I just looked it up on Baseball Reference, and I'm like, that's a pretty cool number.
Yeah.
You know how many millions and millions and millions of people and people who always hoped. And I mean, listen, I was looking at your journey in 2016 AAA, 2017 AAA, 2018 AAA, 2019 AAA. So you'd always been really close. And I knew that. I knew your story. And we've known each other a long time. But I always was like, man, I just want Jake to get that one shot. And then I'm sure there was a lot of other people in your life that wanted that too, as well as Janie. And then you get it. And it's July 6th, and you actually get in the game. Mm-hmm. Describe what you were feeling, getting ready for that game, thinking you might pitch. You still don't know 100% because the game dictates different ebbs and flows and how you do it, but then you get that chance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that was one of the things that helped me a lot in that situation was, one, we were in Miami. There weren't a ton of people at the game, so we were on the road, and it wasn't like it was like 50,000 crazy fans. It was it was a weekday, I think, and so not a ton of people there. But what the Dodgers did really well, and I really appreciate is there was sort of like a script before the game, with a set of guys that you might be coming in to face, maybe after the fifth inning or maybe the starter's third time through the lineup. And for me, like I facing a lot of righties, especially with the Dodgers, and so there was kind of a chunk of the lineup where it was a bunch of righties in a row, and so before the game. Our bullpen coach showed me the script and said, hey, like, third time through the lineup, this is going to be you be ready to go. And our bullpen was really spent that day, or the Dodgers bullpen was really spent. And he pretty much told me that I was going to be the first one up, which looking back now, it kind of gave me some time to like process everything and not have to like have that first, like when the phone rings, like wondering if it's going to be me, I kind of, that spot, it happened just how he told me it was going to. That spot of the lineup came up. The starter, I think, made it through 5 and change. And I came right into the game. I was the first guy up. It was 1-0. We were up 1-0. So it was like, I got thrown right into the fire, and I think it was a perfect way to kind of get that first one out of the way,
Yeah, you don't have time to think.
Right.
If you're being brought in, you're like, all right, let's go. You get your warm-up pitches, and it's like, all right, it's baseball.
Yep.
It's crazy.
Yep.
And then you had that opportunity. You pitched a few games with the Mets. I'm sorry, with the Dodgers. I think 6. And then certain things happen again, and your career is back in this kind of roller coaster ride, if you will, in 2021. By the way, 6 different pro baseball teams that you played with in 2021. I want people to hear this. Like, you had your dream.
Yeah.
And you got that opportunity, but you were with the Salt Lake Bees, Oklahoma City, like you said, the Dodgers in L.A., but then the Durham Bulls, the Syracuse Mets, and, of course, my favorite team being the Mets. I remember you getting that opportunity, and all of a sudden I'm watching a Sunday night game against the Dodgers, and you're pitching for the Mets. And I'm like, what's happening here, Jake Reed? This is kind of whirlwind.
Yeah.
Describe what those few weeks, I guess, really were like, getting the big league opportunity. Obviously, you want that to just be, that's it. I'm here and I'm staying here forever. And you're not even with the same team in a couple days. What was that kind of like for you? Were you able to enjoy it and appreciate it, or was it just kind of back to business, and it's like, all right, let's go.
I think in the moment it was what I thought was gratitude, of just like I had spent so long in the minor leagues with the Twins and was so close for so long and never got up, and finally getting that opportunity with the Dodgers, I was like, I'll go anywhere now, just to like finally have gotten up there. I felt at the time I was just grateful, that I could say I'm a big leaguer, I struck somebody out, I threw an inning, so, and then kind of getting hit with like the business side of things. I got, DFA'd after a couple good weeks with the Dodgers. I had, right around the All-Star break, I got to go home, which was nice. But right after the All-Star break, got DFA'd. And then hung out in Oklahoma City for a couple days, and then got claimed. It was actually after a church service. I got a call from somebody from the Rays, like sitting in my car right after church, saying I got claimed by them. So, jumped on a plane from Oklahoma City to Norfolk, and the morning that I got to Norfolk with the AAA team for the Rays I got there at like 2 or 3 a.m., I think, and Janie's gold medal game was that morning at 6 that time, or 7. So I got a few hours of sleep and then turned the game on and watched the gold medal game half asleep, in a hotel room in Norfolk. And
I was going to ask you where you were when that game was happening.
And I guess, like, side note, a cool part of the whole, like, the only cool thing about getting DFA'd was that I was not with the team, and I got to watch. I didn't miss an inning. I didn't miss a pitch of the Olympics, where if I would have been with the Dodgers or even in AAA with Oklahoma City, I probably would have missed a couple games, would have had to record them or something. But I got to watch. I got to watch every game, and so that was cool. And then I was with the Durham Bulls for I think 3 or 4 games, and then trade deadline, the Rays made a trade right at the deadline and needed a spot, got DFA'd by them, and I was like, I wanted to go home, and kind of waited out at home this time. So went home to San Diego, was there for a couple days, and then got a text from my old pitching coach with the Twins, Jeremy Hefner, who's now the pitching coach with the Mets, saying that they claimed me. So jumped on a flight that next morning, met the team in Miami, and
Miami again.
Yeah, Miami again, and so it was a crazy couple of weeks there, and just kind of processing it all. Like, looking back now on the season, like I said, in the moment, I was just thankful. I was thankful to have made it, and then I was thankful to I continued to get claimed, by good teams, and so I was thankful to be on a roster and thankful to have a job. But looking back now, like, it was very difficult in the sense of, when you're with that many different teams, that means you're with that many different groups of guys, and you don't really plant any roots anywhere, and it's very difficult to find any sort of community. And looking back at that year, like, it was really tough, of just like not having a consistent team or a consistent group of guys, just bouncing around, living out of your suitcase. And, like, obviously Janie being on the other side of the world, it was challenging. It was a blessing and very thankful for everything that happened, but it was also a very challenging season.
Take me to that Sunday night game. It didn't end well for the Mets. It was a blowout, if I remember correctly. But it was a game where you got an opportunity to come in, pitch on Sunday Night Baseball, national audience. I remember watching it, taking pictures and posting them on Instagram and saying, "There's Jake, there's my guy." And you had a couple strikeouts and showed some emotion. And you even got a plate appearance.
Yeah.
And you made it to first base. And suddenly you're showing the wheels. And people were talking about how the speed was there for Jake Reed. And I'm thinking, this is kind of surreal. Obviously, you want to win the game, and that's always the bottom line. But this opportunity on Sunday Night Baseball, are you able to appreciate like a moment like that in a game like that when you think back to all that you have been through? And I know it wasn't your debut, but in some ways it kind of was because it was on a national stage.
Yeah, 100%. We're in a situation where I had to throw, more pitches than I'd thrown in a long. I hadn't thrown 3 innings in a while, but again, our for whatever reason, our bullpen was just spent. We hardly had anybody down there, and so
so they told you probably you had to throw multiple innings.
They told me, and I just knew, like, we had a couple guys left down there, and I think our starter went a couple innings, and so I just knew. And then I think I threw 2 innings and my pitch count was still pretty low. And coming in, they asked me if I was okay, and I said, absolutely, it's still good. And I knew my spot was coming up in the lineup. And so I'm sitting there in the dugout, and they tell me, like, hey, if there's anybody on base, first or second with less than 2 outs, you're bunting. I'm like, okay. So I get up there. Max Scherzer's on the mound.
Max Scherzer.
Yeah.
By the way, New York Mets now
Yeah, that's
pitcher,
right.
and your teammate,
Yeah.
Max Scherzer.
So he's on the bump, and I'd go to bunt the first pitch and just whiff, like I think he threw me like a breaking ball or something, and I looked horrible. And I step out of the box, and I look at the third base coach, and he gives me like he does this, so I'm like, I look at him, and I'm like watching the video back. I'm like, hit? And he doesn't say anything, and I look in at Jousey. Jousey's here at the conference. I'm looking in at him, and he doesn't say anything. So I'm like, okay, I guess I'm supposed. Maybe they saw the bunt attempt, and they're like, maybe there's a better chance of just hitting. So
yeah.
I swung, hit a ball, put a ball in play to shortstop, and some stuff happened at short. I think he tried to tag the runner, and missed him. And then by the time he went to throw it to first, I had beat it out. But adrenaline had kind of taken over at that point, and I was just an athlete. You put the ball in play, you run. So
Yes.
got on first base. I think the next guy walked, and I was on second base, and there was a mound visit. So I had a couple minutes to kind of like stop, and I'm like looking, and I'm at eye level with I'm like looking at Scherzer, and I'm looking around this, like, we're playing LA, so the stadium's packed.
City Field.
Yeah. And just like in that moment, like, I hadn't really like taken much in before that, running into the game and even pitching and stuff. Like, you're kind of in like competitor mode or whatever. But for whatever reason, like, I was doing everything I could in that moment to slow it down and to take everything in. I'm like, I'm on base right now in the major leagues. I just had that bat off Max Scherzer, and I'm just standing here getting to take all this in. And that was probably one of the coolest moments of my short career so far. Like, just being able to kind of appreciate, like, where I was, after everything that I had been through in my career. I was like, I am on second base right now in the big leagues. Like, what is happening?
No, it was pretty cool. I was excited to watch it, and I'm excited for you, man. I hope you're in the big leagues for the rest of your career. But if you never pitch another game in the big leagues, you have that story now in that moment. And I know your wife was super excited, your biggest fan, posting about it as well. What was 2021 like from a marriage perspective? Because you just described everything that you went through. Your wife was in Tokyo for a long time, and in different places, obviously training. And it's a unique marriage with two athletes who aren't together as often as you would like. And I know you were together quite a bit in 2020 with COVID. What was this past year like for you guys growing in your marriage? You're 4 years now married?
Yeah,
right
just over 4. Yeah.
So just over 4. What was that like for you, kind of trying to stay, because you want to stay connected.
Yeah.
You obviously love your wife, but it's very difficult. It's such a unique kind of bond that you guys have, but also a unique situation with the roles that you have.
I think we were a lot more prepared for it than we thought we were going to be, and we were a lot more content with the way that everything kind of transpired than if you would have told me, this time last year that I was going to make my debut and she was going to miss it and she was going to win a silver medal and I was going to miss it. Like, that's hard. These are like once in a lifetime things, but we were a lot more equipped and prepared for it by God's grace than we had even understood or known, because we have had experience with long distance and sort of, doing this life for a few years now. But I think God has just been good and providing for us and sustaining us through it all. And I think we were distracted in a good way. She had her thing going on, with the Olympics. It was right around when they were getting going. And then, obviously, getting called up and stuff, like, you're so kind of focused and on what you're doing. But, I think God had just really been working and preparing us for this for a long time. And another thing that really helped was how incredible Janie's teammates were and really celebrating the moment, of just like, it gets me emotional thinking about it. She wasn't able to be there, and I called her. It was like 3:30 a.m. when I called her, and she wasn't sure if her friends were going to be up, but she called a couple of her teammates and they woke up. And, the next day, first thing in the morning, they, decorated a room for her and made her breakfast and like celebrated her in that way, and sort of this cool moment for our family. And then she came into a room with her whole team. At one point that next morning, everybody got up and cheered and gave her a hug. And she sent me a picture of her. She had practiced the first game I was up in the big leagues. They were practicing during the game, and she said like somebody was following the game, and she asked the coach if she could leave, if I came in to pitch to watch the debut, and he's like, absolutely. So somebody came and got her, and there was a picture, I'll send it to you, of her in the stands with the phone with a couple of her coaches behind her. She's smiling ear to ear watching my debut.
So cool.
And then, just like she sent me videos of them watching me pitch, and all of them are around this little tiny phone. I think there was like one of my first strikeouts, and all of them are cheering. And it was so cool for them to help her. I think that made it a lot easier on both of us, that they just loved her and celebrated her in that way, and we're so supportive. And it was really cool, man. I mean, and honestly, like, I think even if it put a few more eyes on softball in the Olympics, because it was like I got called up by the Dodgers, and social media and stuff kind of figured out that she was in the Olympics, and so I think it like kind of put some more eyeballs on her and her teammates, which was really cool too. So
by the way, you were in LA and then New York. Mm-hmm. It's not like you were, no offense to Minneapolis or Minnesota, we love the Twins and there are a lot of great people there, but you're in the two biggest markets in the United States. Mm-hmm. Pitching, even at a small level or for a few games. So that helps too.
Yeah.
When you have a large market and fans that are all over the country and all over the world, really, to put some eyeballs on softball. Mm-hmm. How are you when you watched that gold medal game? Because I watched that game. I think it was at like 8 or 9 in the morning, early. East Coast time. Mm-hmm. And my daughter is a softball player, and I've told Janie about her. So she and I are watching, and my wife are watching. I'm watching that left fielder. I'm like, that's Janie, Sarah. You got to watch her. She's the one we're rooting for. We're rooting for them all, but we know Janie. And I think she made like a ridiculous catch in that game too, right?
Yeah.
Robbed somebody of a home run, and it was just this really cool moment. And obviously they would have liked to win, but I'm curious from a husband perspective, were you more nervous pitching in your first ever Major League Baseball game or watching your wife try to win a gold medal?
Definitely watching her.
So you get into it.
Yeah, I do, and I think I was thankful that I was able to watch it kind of alone in my hotel room.
That's good.
It was cool. Like when I was in Oklahoma City for one of her games, and it happened to start at like 10 p.m. Our time, and so we had just wrapped up a game, and then a bunch of guys stuck around after and watched the game with me, which was cool. But I was thankful in that gold medal game to be alone. But I get super nervous watching her. Like,
are you pacing, or are you like sitting in bed with just an iPad?
I was exhausted. I had the Fire Stick, and it was on TV and stuff. But I like, there's a charity wives softball game that the Twins do with the Rays every spring training, and she was with me one spring and got to play in that. And I was like,
that's so a little
nervous
unfair,
for that.
Right? But that's a little unfair, isn't it?
She didn't do very
when
well.
When your wife's a softball
Olympian. That was the thing, is like there was like, some guys knew who she was, and like there was a ton of pressure on her to like, perform and live up to, like an Olympic softball player. And I think she like hit a ground ball up the middle and like hit one off the end of the bat. So like she didn't do super well hitting. So I was much more nervous for watching her than pitching like ever in my life.
I was bummed that they lost, but I was so happy that she was having her moment and being able to play well, which she did, I thought, and to still get a silver medal is a big deal.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep, totally. Yeah.
I mean, that's one for the kids and the grandkids and all of that someday.
Yeah.
Hopefully she'll get another shot. I don't know, but if not, she's always got that moment.
Yeah. She played well, and if it's the last game that she ever plays in, with USA, she had a great game, and she made an incredible catch that I didn't even know she was able to do that.
Yes.
So yeah, I was just proud of her. It was a really incredible run and career with USA, and like you said, I mean, they went there to win gold, but silver medal is an awesome accomplishment.
Still a big deal.
Yeah,
absolutely. My last question for you is kind of, what is the Lord teaching and showing you right now? And we ask that to a lot of guests here on the show, but I think for you, with everything that you went through this past year and kind of now into 2022 and looking into next year and what's that going to look like? Where do you think you are right now in terms of your faith and what God's been kind of teaching you?
I think, like I said, kind of looking back at the season and just that kind of lack of community and fellowship. I think understanding how important it is when we get back home to really get plugged back into our community, into the local body of Christ. You know, I think this conference is so great at uniting baseball players and you know, putting faces to names, and a lot, like if we're lucky enough to play on the same team as some of these guys that we're here at the conference with, it's great to have those guys in your corner. But I think for us, we're really starting to learn the value of you know, the local body of Christ and you know, our just our community, you know, and fellowship, and how important it is when we get home in the off season to really get plugged back in and you know, and then even while we're gone, you know, I think we need to do a better job. I need to do a better job of you know, really staying connected while we're away, and just, you know, not letting a week or 2 weeks go by where I'm not having you know, a conversation with somebody from back home, whether it be my pastor or other people from the church or even somebody on the team. But I think that lack of community and that lack of fellowship, it was really hard on me, you know. And so I think it's been a blessing for us to be back home and to be you know, in a healthy church that we love, and just, you know, really kind of falling in love with this group of people that we're so lucky to be around. And so I think, you know, that's what's encouraging us, and I would just encourage that for other people as well. I think, you know, just whether it's young believers or you know, I think sometimes we think as athletes that we can't relate to anybody, you know, in our local churches, but that couldn't be any further from the truth. You know, we're all brothers and sisters in Christ, and that community back home and you know, those 4 or 5 months, whatever we get at home, are precious and should be used to kind of get recharged, and then you have all those people praying for you during the season, which is great. So I would say that's a big thing.
That's good. He is Jake Reed. Thank you, brother. Appreciate you coming back on the show. Great to see you in person. Give Janie our best, and hopefully we'll do it again soon. See you, man.
Yeah, thanks.
And many thanks to Jake Reed for being here today on Sports Spectrum. I love that guy. I'm so happy for him and his wife, Janie. Janie's an Olympic silver medalist softball player, and Jake is now a Major League Baseball pitcher. And what a 2021 that was for him as he navigated all that the Lord had brought him to and brought him through. And who knows where he's going to take both Janie and Jake in 2022. I'm excited to see where Jake Reed ends up and how he performs in 2022, hopefully with the big league club and the New York Mets. Many thanks to Jake for being here today on Sports Spectrum. We also appreciate you for tuning in. Always appreciate you for tuning in. Do us a favor and click that subscribe button, whatever app you listen to podcasts on, so that you never miss an episode of Sports Spectrum's podcast. Thousands of episodes at this point now. Our audience has grown to our largest audience we've ever had, and that's all because of you. As you share the podcast, as you listen to the podcast, as you look at this as a resource to share with others, to look at it as a gateway, an opportunity to tell others about Jesus. Again, thanks for forgiving me on my voice here. We're working on getting this voice back to normal, hopefully soon, but we appreciate you for tuning in and joining us today on Sports Spectrum. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you next time.